Hey guys, how's it going? Ezra here, and today we're going to go over the offline mode feature that has been discussed slightly back and forth for some time. I say some time, but it's approximately 2 days, at least the active discussion. So, Riot made a response to someone saying, whoa, offline status would be pretty cool. They said, it is not a feature that's currently planned to be added, but we do recognize that this is a feature that's requested quite often. What we're committed to is to conduct research on it to understand more of why players want an offline/invisible mode, and what activity they expect to take while in that state. Now, I made a sarcastic tweet to this that you could pay me the money and I will do the research for you in 5 minutes, and they made a follow-up post, obviously not responding to me, but to the backlash in general. Hello everyone, we've seeing some passionate responses. You can give Riot all the crap you want, but they are really hell-bent on having positive outlook. Passionate responses to our note yesterday about addressing requests for appearing offline or invisible mode on the friends list. We should reiterate that our main goal right now is getting League Client updated to feature parity with the Legacy Client, aka not developing whole new features, but we want to talk about this more in depth. Totally okay with this. They don't want to work too much, they don't want to make too much more stuff for the old client, because they're making a new one. And memes aside, that is really great. I hope it won't take too long. It would be really cool with a new client. But yeah. Moving on, our official line on an invisible mode boiled down to, we're researching it to learn more. The Risk community's response was, what's there to learn? We're telling you we want it, so why do you have to research? I don't think that's what you should take from the community backlash. I think you should see it as us saying, you should probably not say you should make it because we want you to make it. You should make it because of the reasons why we want you to make it. So, not just give it because we want it, but there's reasons why we want it, and those reasons are what you should look at. So they explain, first of all, research can mean that we want to investigate impact of a feature on a global level. It is also something just shorthand for scooping out the work. To deliver chat invisibility feature, we'd have to answer some nitty-gritty questions about how exactly an invisible mode would work in practice before you prototype those features. Questions like, now I'll go through all these questions, but I want to make a distinction first that will make answering these questions so much easier. There is an invisibility mode. An invisibility mode that has been available on chat functions since fucking MSN. An invisibility mode is you are online, you can see who's online, you can chat to people, but to everyone else you appear as offline. On Skype that would mean you have the what's it called, transparent image instead of the green or red one. As if you were offline, but people can still chat to you. Now, an offline mode would mean you are not connected to the chat. You are, for all intents and purposes, offline. So you can play the game, but you are not connected to the chat. It is as if you were disconnected with the chat. You will not be able to interact with the chat. You can't see who's online, you can't talk to anyone, and no one can talk to you. I would really like this feature, but yeah, it's like I said, it's been around on Skype and MSN and all the old chat sources. With that distinction in mind, let's go through the questions here. Could invisible players see and chat with friends? What about in clubs? Well, invisible players would be able to see and chat with friends because they appear offline. They are not, in fact, offline. They would be able to chat in clubs, but they wouldn't be shown as online in the club. They would be shown as offline. People who want to chat with them can start chat logs with them, but it's like starting a chat log with someone who's offline. You wouldn't just instinctively know to do it, unless you're like stalking them on OP.GG and you see that they play games, which is kind of creepy. But yes, technically that could work. But in that case, the guy could just be pretending to be offline, so no real issue. Now, on the flip side, could offline players see and chat with friends? What about in clubs? No. They are offline for all intents and purposes. They cannot see their friends. Well, they cannot see their friends in the I cannot stumble on words there because friends is. Moving on. They cannot see the people in their friends list, and they cannot see everyone in the clubs because they are offline in the chat service. Moving on. I hope that's clear. Once a chat is initiated, would friends in a chat would still see the invisible players offline. Now, taking the invisible player, yes, they would still see him as offline, because otherwise it kind of loses a bit of its purpose. So you could just prod and poke and see if someone is offline by sending a message to them, and then if they're invisible, well, you'd see them as online. And I imagine that's a bit more tricky to code. I don't know anything about coding, so, you know, I'm kind of speaking out of my ass here. But all that aside, I think it would lose some of its meaning if you could just prod and see if someone is offline. Now, once the chat is initiated, would friends in chat still see the offline players offline? Well, yes, because you wouldn't be able to start a chat with him, because he's offline, for all intents and purposes. Take a shot every time I say that. He is not connected to the chat, so it won't work. Could you be invisible on the League Friends mobile app? I mean, yeah, you could be invisible, and I mean, that would be helpful, obviously, but I mean, if you only want to chat with the certain people on your Friends app, I suppose you could do that. It had the same effect as, you know, yeah, as if you were online but didn't want to play. On the flip side, could you be offline on League Friends mobile app? I mean, yeah, you could turn off the application. It would have the same effect. I don't think you'd probably need that, because if you don't really want to talk with someone, you probably shouldn't start an application that only has a purpose of speaking. Moving on. Could invisible players receive mobile notifications? Example, messages, friend request, while invisible. They would be able to receive notifications because they are invisible. They are not offline. They appear offline. So, messages and friend requests would be received, but they choose if they want to respond to them. However, could an offline player receive mobile notifications? Example, messages, friend requests, while offline? No, they are offline and are not connected to the chat, so they would not receive messages or friend requests. They would be completely cut off from the social site. Could invisible players selectively invite friends to lobbies? Can they be invited to lobbies by friends? Yes, they are invisible. They are still online. They just appear as offline. So they can invite friends to lobbies. In the lobbies, they would seem offline and they would appear offline, but they're not. Can they be invited to lobbies by friends? Yes, but they would appear offline. Now, the problem here comes when you say, okay, so if it goes to the offline players, could offline players selectively invite friends to lobbies? Can they be invited to lobbies by friend? I'd say no, of course, because for all intents and purposes, they're offline. But then you say, well, can't you just poke and prod by sending an invitation to offline friends to lobbies? And I agree, this is where it gets a little bit more tricky, but the only distinction you have to make is that if you send an invitation to an invisible friend, it would appear as if they're offline. So if you have a prompt that says this person is offline, you won't be able to invite him, then you'd get the same thing when they're invisible. They just would be able to join anyway. So it would seem the same way. So instead of rather saying that you can never invite someone who is offline or seemingly offline, you just say you can invite someone who's offline. It's just very unlikely that they will respond because they're probably offline. And that problem is then solved. It has the same function if you're invisible and offline. Friends can't see your match history and that you were playing games. Is that something we'd be cool with? They can always do that through op.gg, so that's not really something you have to worry about anyway, because it would just show up on op.gg. And if you have someone who's stalking you to that extent, and is angry that you are invisible instead of talking to them, or offline instead of talking to them, then don't think that's a problem Riot can solve, unfortunately. And it's honestly not something they should even touch on, because op.gg, you can see it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So, all in all, if you make the distinction between offline and invisible, you pretty much solve all these problems. I don't really know if you have any suggestions in the comments about something I missed. I don't really see the problems here. And again, I have very, very little experience with programming, especially on this level. I can't say I understand much of it. Or, I mean, I'm not very good at programming, so let's just drop that. I'm sure this is possible because, as I said, it's been done in MSN, but I don't know how unstable the client is or whatever. But practicality, when it doesn't come to programming, all these things are easily solved. If the programming can be solved, then all the practical things like these are not an issue, as long as you make the distinction. And best case scenario, you add both an invisible and an offline mode, because then you have all the social functions that you'd want. I mean, you could add a do not disturb mode where you wouldn't get notifications in game. That would be cool, but honestly, the most optimal choice would just be appear invisible. So if there's someone who knows you're going to be playing this time and you just want to talk to them and get messages in game by them, then that'd still work. And if you don't want to talk to anyone, then you just go offline in the chat mode. Nothing more than that. I think that should be pretty much it, right? I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.